Well, kicking things off on our show, our first guest is not only bringing back funding to District 13, he's bringing it right back to the borough of the Bronx. He's here now to discuss the 2014 budget, plus a little bit more. We're pleased to welcome Councilman Jimmy Valker with us. And,
how are you?
Good to have you back.
Good to be back again.
Yeah.
Nice seeing you. How many years we've
been doing this for like almost 20 years.
Yeah. Yes, that long.
That's been a long time. And seen you risen through the ranks.
Thank you.
And so as you're here as a councilman and, 2014, and we're looking now, and we talked about bringing money home. And so you were able to actually bring some dollars home. Let's get right into it. $1 million grant recently awarded for Pelham Parkway and Bronx House.
Yeah, well, Bronx House is the center of the Pelham Parkway community. It has services for everyone, starting at a very young age, 2, 3, 4 years old, right all the way through to senior citizen services. So I brought home over $1 million to help Bronx House renovate their facility, and we also managed to free up over $500,000 that Bronx House has had sitting there in city money for over 9 years in bureaucratic red tape. So that's going to make a big contribution. Right. Also, I'm chair of the technology committee of the New York City Council, and an initiative I sponsored, over $750,000, is going to go to training people in the Bronx on how to use technology. Whether you're an immigrant, whether you're a senior citizen, whether you have English language issues, we want you to be trained on how to use the internet. Many Bronxites don't have access to internet service, and we want to teach them how to use it, and we want to bring it home to this borough. And that initiative was adopted.
It's almost assumed, though, with all the wave of technology, that people know how to use it. But I guess from what you're finding is, and we found out, a lot of people just aren't so familiar.
No, especially seniors. I go to many senior centers, and their children have moved away. Their children are in other states, and many seniors want a way to communicate. And also, access to technology for senior citizens is really important from a social interaction point of view. Many of them are isolated. Many of them are widows or widowers, and they don't have that social communication that the internet can bring to them via email, via finding out what's on sale in their local supermarkets or in a department store. All those things are very important. So we're going to be doing some meaningful outreach in the year ahead based on the initiative I funded.
Meeting the needs of people is very important to you. And talk about the Pelham Bay Little League, because that's a big project for you too.
Well, I'm mad at the Parks Department for a while. They have projects. We as city council people provide money for parks projects, and it takes the Parks Department years to spend the money we give them. This money we give them produces jobs, it produces community improvements, and it can't be that the money is sitting there years before it's spent. Niger has had the same issue. So here in the Parks Department, in a project in my district, the local Little League got a $200,000 grant through my office, but the local Little League said that they had to spend money out of their own pocket because the contractor didn't do the job right. And they went to court and they won a settlement of almost $10,000 that they have to be reimbursed. So it's a victory for local little people fighting big people, but it also means that we in the council have to enact legislation, which I've now proposed, which says that the Parks Department, when they get money through the City Council, cannot change the parameters of that project without coming back to the local council person, who in turn will go back to the local neighborhood to have them review how those plans and designs have changed.
When you talk about delivering money home, it's got to be a good feeling. We talked about Bronx House, you talked about the Little League field, the things that you've been able to do as a senior member now of the City Council, we can now say. How important is it for you, or how should I say, how important is it to be able to deliver these funds home when we're in such an economic downturn?
Well, I believe that a local councilman has many, many opportunities to not only fight to get improvements, but to also fight back when there's a cut that is dangerous to the people he represents or to the borough. This year, I don't know how, but the mayor's budget did not include funding for CUNY Prep. It's a city university program which allows students who don't function in a traditional high school very well an opportunity for a second chance. And the mayor's budget did not include $2.4 million. And without that allocation, that school, which is in Pelham Parkway, but serves the whole borough, would have closed. And I'm on the budget negotiating team of the New York City Council, and I'm a deputy leader at this point, so I'm in the room. And if I'm in the room, I'm able to fight to get that money restored. And in the 11th hour, that money was restored. So I basically told my colleagues, I'm not going back to my district unless this program is restored. I visited there, I know the staff, I've met the kids. And I was determined not to let that go by the wayside, because that's a program that should be replicated throughout the city. It's not a program that should be tossed aside because someone made a decision that's arbitrary not to include it in City University's funding package.
You talked a little bit about some of the red tape. We talked about Bronx House had money that was actually sitting there. Talked about, getting these things out. Obviously, very clearly, there's a problem. What is being done to address the problem of the bureaucratic red tape and really the slowballing that really hinders some of these projects? Because if the money doesn't come, the reality is projects can really close down.
Darren, you're 100% right. I want to give the new administration a chance to deal with something which has been so structural in our budget process, namely the inability of the city to spend money it has. NYCHA is a classic example. Many of us, including myself, have allocated money for cameras for NYCHA developments. That money, until recently, unfortunately it took a murder in Brooklyn to really get the city to say, the money is there, damn it, spend it. That's what it took. Now, I've allocated money for every development in my district. The two senior developments, 2440 Boston Road Plaza and Middletown Plaza, now have cameras. Pelham Parkway, they're starting to install them, and then Throgs Neck is coming next. So every development will have cameras. Over $5 to $6 million I've allocated. Well, I want that money spent, and I want it spent now. And I think that this new administration, the mayor and his team, have to come to grips with the reality that we want the money spent. We don't want this to sit there for years, because when the money sits there for years, the original cost may be $1 million. If it sits there 3, 4, 5 years, you're now looking at $2 million.
Exactly.
So you can't do what you intended to do because the cost of the project goes up. You're not producing the jobs that these projects produce. These projects are multi-million-dollar jobs, and they produce community-based jobs. And by not having the money spent, that goes out the window. And then you're not effectuating the neighborhood improvements. And people have a right to public safety. They have a right to make sure that what their elected officials do based on their allocations is actually resulting in a community improvement.
Before we let you go, talk to us a little bit about the mall. It's going to be a huge infrastructure for the borough of the Bronx, and not just for the borough of the Bronx, but really for the city of New York.
Well, I don't know which mall. We're getting so many malls. We're getting a mall at Bay Plaza, which is expanding. Macy's is the center of that mall. It's going to be opening soon. We're getting another mall on Brush and Lafayette, a smaller mall, but we're getting a Target-based mall there, and that should be opening within the next couple of days, I understand. We're getting another mall also ultimately at Bartow Avenue and Gun Hill Road, which is MTA property, and that's going to be a mall there. So all of this is job producing, and all of this means people are going to have another opportunity to shop. I also think the problem we face as a government, as city, state, and federal officials, is that we have to get a way to get people to get there from a traffic perspective. We really don't have the infrastructure. And unless we come to grips with the traffic issues, then people will not be able to shop. People will be frustrated. It's going to hurt the economy, and it's going to mean that many people will be trapped in their local neighborhoods, not being able to get in their car and go where they want to go. So I think that is the challenge we face because of all the shopping centers opening within a very, very confined area.
All right, well, Councilman Jimmy Vaca, thank you for coming to share with us, and we definitely have to
continue
continue our conversation again.
I appreciate being here.
Stay right there. All right, got to take a quick break, but when we return, we'll have Clark Pena who will join us, and he'll weigh in on the Eric Garner case. Stay tuned. We'll have much more right after this.